Welcome back to DONSLIFE and welcome to the channel. Let's take a minute to level set. Now, unless you've been living under a rock or you're new here, welcome. Today I want to touch on several subjects that are part of the active safety recall and known issues with the current generation GMC and Chevrolet SUVs and trucks. The following is not rumor, it's not emotion, this is sourced reporting, publicly available information with a little bit of analysis. Let's go. In my last video, and I'll link it here, I reported on GM quietly advising their dealers to switch to a different formula of Mobil 1 0W40 oil. This applies to engines that passed inspection under the L87 active safety recall and are also being instructed to move away from the Mobil 1 0W40 supercar oil to an alternative Mobil 1 0W40 oil called FS 0W40. Little different formula, still DONSLIFE approved. So the critical facts in that update were, we still have the higher viscosity requirement under the recall for the past engines. DONSLIFE certification is required. GM dealers are moving to Mobil 1 FS 0W40. That's the European formula. It has the same certification on paper, but it's also listed on Mobil 1's website to be DONSLIFE, as well as GM's website. And the new oil spec was listed on GM's website prior to the dealer notice. But if you read between the lines, the main thing is it's going to be a lower cost to this service as well as wider availability. So it appears that protection levels and approvals are the same, but availability and cost seem to have influenced this decision. Now, before we go any further, I want to address something that's important. Within 24 hours of me posting the video talking about this oil spec change, a GM technician reached out to me and shared an internal bulletin, not currently publicly available, that describes the entire process when it comes to this change. It's dated January 2026. He's also requested that I don't post the document, but I can definitely show it on screen. And because this document is for internal use with the technicians and the dealerships, overall it's not that interesting. However, if you're an owner, there are some things that I picked out of it that might be of interest to you. The first thing to me was around the language of the oil specification changing. Now, before you say, Don, stop repeating yourself, we know this information. Yes, we do. But like I said, it's the language around it. So let me tell you why this is important. So first, it tells me that GM is prioritizing DONSLIFE approval, not specific marketing on the label of the bottle. From an owner standpoint, this is important because it means there isn't just one magical oil to address this recall. The approval standard is what matters, and dealer supply flexibility is part of the equation. It doesn't automatically mean that the oil is worse, but it certainly tells us that sourcing and cost control are happening behind the scenes. The second thing that caught my attention, the inspection criteria wording seems to be more refined than the versions before. So why is this interesting? Well, from an owner standpoint, this matters a lot because when criteria changes even slightly, it can influence whether an engine passes inspection or gets replaced. The question it raises is simple. Are the inspections today being performed with more clarity and consistency than the earliest vehicles were? This is not an accusation, this is just an evolution in the procedure. That said, as recalls progress, manufacturers often refine their procedures based on what they're seeing in the field. This is completely normal, but it is significant. And the third interesting update from this document relates to the engine replacement coding and the warranty processing. So in plain English, this bulletin clarifies how dealers submit claims, categorize engines, and identify whether the replacement unit is new production or remanufactured. And as owners, this matters because it has to be one of the most common questions I receive from all the videos I've made on the subject. People who had replacements want to know, what type of engine did I actually get? And more importantly, how is that documented? That transparency is important for resale value, warranty clarity, and long-term ownership confidence. Now here's where this gets interesting for this channel specifically. I'm going to send my used oil to the lab from not only my 2021 GMC Sierra 6.2 liter, not part of the recall, but also my wife's 2022 Cadillac Escalade Sport Platinum, which is part of the recall. And why am I doing this? Because I'll think it'll be interesting to learn what my current oil, the 0W20 Dexos 1 Gen 3 engine oil says about my engine health, and then compare it to the FS0W40 engine oil that I'll be putting in, weight 3,000 miles, 5,000 kilometers, have it tested and compare them both. In between that, I'll also test my wife's oil, which is the 0W40 supercar oil. So we'll have 3 different versions of the oil that's been prescribed to these vehicles over the years, and we'll see what each says about the engine health using that oil. I know it's not perfect science, but I'm quite interested to see the differences, if there are any. I think this will make for a pretty interesting comparison, considering we have similar mileage, similar driving habits, and we live in the same climate. So if you're not subscribed, now might be the time. Now let's talk about replacement engines, because this has been a huge topic over the last year since this recall started. If you went down the rabbit hole and dug deep, you would be able to make some pretty accurate assumptions. But not everybody has the time for that, and I completely understand, which is why you watch channels like this. So that said, you can now verify this information publicly on GM Authority, The Drive, Car and Driver, and other news outlets. But I thought I would provide some food for thought when it comes to this subject. So based on current reporting, replacement engines may be the following: brand new production assemblies, remanufactured assemblies, or updated service stock engines. Before you're set on these definitions, a remanufactured engine does not mean junkyard engine. A proper GM remanufactured engine gets completely disassembled, machined, fitted with revised components, rebalanced, and retested. So here's the nuance. A remanufactured engine after GM identified the root cause could, in theory, be better than an early production, brand new engine built before corrections were implemented. Now, if you live in a cold weather climate, this next one may have inflicted all of you. It's inflicted me when I have to park my GMC Sierra outside, because that's where it resides. It's had an impact on my wife's Escalade, because there are times where it had to be parked outside overnight when it was extremely cold. And what I'm getting at is the effect that can have on your systems, more specifically Stabilitrak. So the typical symptom is you go to start the vehicle and it says service Stabilitrak, service brake assist, there's ABS warnings, and you get the reduced power warning. Like I said, I personally experienced this, and it does seem to be subject to extreme cold, something we have plenty of here in the prairies of Canada. I've never panicked in this situation, because I could tell just starting the vehicle that we had a lower voltage situation. So the remedy I always found that worked was get a little charge into the battery, restart the vehicle, and usually you're okay. But this has been reported on recently through a number of news outlets, so I just wanted to give you my take, my experience, and my resolution. Now, we know this about the modern GM platform, is they are incredibly sensitive when it comes to electronics and low voltage situations. The best thing you can do is maintain your battery. This doesn't automatically mean there was hardware failure. In most cases, if you took it to the dealership, you've now recharged the battery if you drove it there, and they're not going to be able to replicate the symptom. I've also used my scan tool and verified that a low voltage situation contributed to these instances. What can also happen that's in none of this reporting is if you go through deeper snow, which I have with my truck, so this really hasn't happened on the Escalade, is I end up having some problems with wheel speed sensors and brake sensors just until I'm able to clear that snow. So this isn't a shameless product plug, but get yourself a battery maintainer. And when your vehicle is sitting, especially if it's going to be in the cold for long durations, you want as much charging into that battery as possible. So when you go to crank it the next time, you have a healthy dose of output. Because these low voltage gremlins are a real pain, and they just seem to cascade from one system to another until you remedy it. And this brings me to my next subject, grounding straps. Some units have been identified by GM to require new body-to-chassis grounding straps. That is something that you can inspect yourself. Near the battery area, you'll find a grounding strap. I'll share a picture of it here. And what you're looking for is corrosion, a frayed braid, a loose bolt, paint under the area where it makes surface contact, and any oxidation buildup. A bad ground in general can lead to a bunch of problems. So before you panic, if you feel you had this issue, just go inspect the strap. This is a fairly new discovery, at least the GM is starting to act on, so I don't know yet what a recall or a notice will look like to us owners out there. But if you have any questions, I'll link the information down below, and as the situation evolves, we'll learn more together. So what have we learned in this video? Oil changes are evolving, inspection criteria is evolving, engine replacement procedures are evolving, and owners are rightfully asking questions. And I will continue reporting facts, not fear. Subscribe if you want to follow this properly, and in between these update videos, educate or entertain yourself with some of the other content, whether it be about the Escalade, the Corvette C8, my GMC Sierra AT4, or what I'm doing around the DONSLIFE garage, or maybe even in the house. Mrs. DONSLIFE and I would love to have you be part of the DONSLIFE family. So if you like this update, hit that like button, please share it with somebody that might find it valuable, please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time.